Hey everyone, this is Miss 1776 here. Hope everyone's having a good morning so far. Today we will be discussing a couple different topics. We'll be discussing, I don't know if anybody has been paying attention to the whole Rorschach, I'm going to mispronounce that word, drama that's been going on Twitter, and as well as a couple topics that go along with it, such as like death of the author and, the morals and ethics. Oh, sorry, Jean. Oh, I did it again. I always leave up the stupid background thing so I hear myself. Sorry about that, guys. We'll be discussing death of the author as well as moral, ethical characters and kind of that. Let's call it like a dystopian world, dystopian society. Because I think sometimes people will think that there can't be here. Oh, am I coming in clear? If anybody hears me and I don't sound loud enough, let me know in the comments, and I'll go ahead and adjust my mic. But we'll be discussing, again, morals, ethics, and characters when there's a dystopian society, because sometimes people think just because it's a dystopian society, and all these characters don't just have like normal character flaws, but have those severe character flaws where you wouldn't want to meet them in real life. It doesn't mean that they still can't be the hero of their story. So with that, we'll go ahead and Jean, if there are any other characters that you think that you would like to bring up during this discussion, please feel free, because I know you know like a lot more about you know, the MC Marvel world and the Marvel, a lot more about Marvel comics and pretty much every other comics than I know about. So if there's any other characters that fit this bill, I'd love to hear about them, and I'm sure the audience would like to hear about it too. Um, so with that, we'll
If I
go ahead and
have
just
anything to contribute, I will let you know.
Okay, so I would like to let's delve into death of the author first. So with the Roche, for anybody who's not familiar, I don't know what started the Rorschach conversation again, but basically it's just been going around how he's just this evil character, and yet the character, spoiler alert, at the end of the book, who causes chaos and ends up basically decides to take uh he decides to take action into his own hands, where he sees society crumbling, and rather than do any other moral thing to kind of try to patch up society, because it looks like it's heading towards a nuclear war, he decides to I don't know how YouTube is doing with this. He decides to unalive, basically, I think it was like millions of characters, and it's been a while since I've read the book, but basically he makes it look like, I think, I don't know if it was like a third or half the population. It was something crazy like that he just wipes out, and he makes it look like it's due to aliens from outer space, and to get the world to stop fighting within and instead fighting these other outside invaders, kind of to like unite them, but again killing off like millions of innocent people, and just without even talking to anybody else, and seeing, hey, is this the best idea, is there any other idea that we can use. He decided to take fate into his own hands. And then I always find it interesting with characters and people like this, where they're very happy to say that that there's too many in a population, and they'll take everyone else out. They'll take most of the people out. Thanos will take people out, but Thanos won't take himself out. So I always find those characters. Thank you. I was looking for that. Yeah, heretics. His argument was to kill millions to save billions. Now here's the thing: there was no guarantee that billions were going to die. Why didn't they? Again, like it's like there's other ways to go about this. Maybe, I mean, there is a right and a wrong, and that's, like I was saying, one of the things that bothers me with these characters, or even people who argue this, is, again, they're willing to get your loved ones, the people you love, the people you yourself, your loved ones, people you care about, they don't matter for the greater good, but theirs, they matter. So for the greater good, it's okay. They for some reason are the special, and I'm a red-blooded American, and I believe in we the people. So I believe, no, everyone matters. There is no hierarchy of who deserves in these scenarios, of who gets to be part of society, and who we get to cast out for the greater good. I feel like that's just um not good thinking. So anyways, for some reason, this, I guess Alan Moore has talked about this and somehow got re-brought up into the Twitter sphere about how that character is the good guy, and Rorschach is the bad guy. Now Rorschach is I'm sorry, I'm not always great with these terms. I believe it's kind of like the Punisher. So I would say like anti-hero. So he's like the anti-hero. Um, I'm not saying he's exact. I know he's based off of uh well, I think it was Mr. A, and you guys can correct me in the comments, but I believe it was Mr. A, and it was something question. So again, I'm not super familiar with comics, but if you guys, yeah, so it was Mr. A, and I gotta look up the other guy to make sure I got it. I thought it was a question or question mark or something like that, and I don't want to get that wrong. Um, I think okay. Oh, question. Okay, I guess it's the question. The question. Okay, I was close. Close enough, guys, for not having that big of a background in this. So anyways, with the question, he has I guess Rorschach is actually based off of the A and the question, and I'm sure those of you who have read those comics or know more about those are obviously going to equate him to the actual character he's resembled after. However, for me, I guess just for me to best think of it in my mind, since I'm a little bit more familiar with Marvel than I am DC, I just say Punisher. But I just want to put that out there before someone goes, "Oh, you're wrong." It's like I know I'm wrong. There's a difference. Um, so anyway, so his character is he is a very moral character, but he takes the law into his own hands. So he sees like this fallen world, and where he'll see there have been a couple times where there have been like people who've harmed children, so he goes and he offs them. Where he like oh, real quick, yes. Thank you, Heretic, for giving us more of a background on it. The question, think he is a DC hero. He was really cool on Justice League Unlimited. Thank you, Heretic Prince. Really appreciate that tidbit here, and I'm sure everybody else does too. Um, but but going back to Rorschach, his character was like, okay, he he's the one who's like, if you've done something wrong, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna find you, I'm gonna hunt you down, I'm gonna get you, kind of thing. And so, anyways, Cole, hi, Cole. You little stinker. Um, so anyway, so it starts off with the I believe the guy's name was the comedian. I want to call him for the Joker. I'm so glad I didn't actually botch that one. So the comedian, one of the superheroes, ends up murdered, and so Rorschach is investigating it because that was kind of like his mentor. And as he's looking through his like the people who are in his kind of, I don't want to say Justice League, but like basically the heroes that were around during the time that he was, I mean, he's still going, but I think at this point the superheroes is basically all have been disbanded. Um, but now he's going around looking at like, some of his people from his age, going, okay, this his older mentor has been, killed trying to solve it and everything. And like I said, everything's going to kind of boil up to Ozymandias. I know I mispronounced that one, guys. Um, having schemed and had all this stuff like plan for this chaotic end of the world thing. So you see, and I know people have like their issues with Rorschach, but there's a lot of people who like that character and understand that the one thing about him is that he holds to his principles. So and like he's willing to stick by them, whereas the other characters you'll see them waffle on their characters, like, oh, okay, like all these characters ended up allowing that um the psychopath superhero to off every basically started the chain of events. And once they seen it, because I think the chain of the events had already actually started once these other superheroes came to confront him with Rorschach. And it was like, okay, I've already done it, and what are you gonna do? You're not gonna tell anybody, because then you're gonna cause chaos in the world, and they're gonna all point fingers of whose fault it was, and it's gonna just get worse. So he doesn't want to tell them the truth, so everybody buys into going, okay, yeah, I guess not. And, again, justice isn't served that way, though. And so Rorschach, who's holding to his principle of, hey, this is right, this is wrong, goes and he's going to go ahead and tell the people. Well, Dr. Manhattan, who has all these crazy powers and basically can see everything in the past, can see everything in the future, and I think he could even create new societies. He's like basically very all powerful, and um, goes to confront Rorschach going, "Oh, I can't do that." And it's one of those things like, okay, now you get involved, Dr. Manhattan. But basically Rorschach is like, I'm gonna do it. So if you have to kill me, do it, because I'm going to do this, I'm gonna do the right thing and tell the truth. no matter how hard it is sometimes. And it's one of those things. It's like the truth isn't supposed to be something that's always easy. I think that's where people get confused, where they think, oh, well, if you lie, it's okay because sometimes lying makes everything better, not understanding that no, a lie can cause even more issues down the road, you know? Um, Everything comes out in the wash kind of thing. So, I mean, eventually it's going to get found out and you could actually cause more chaos than if you had ripped the band-aid off earlier. And so anyway, so he the thing about Rorschach is he had already known that they would probably off him for trying to do this, and so he ends up he had already written and sent his diary. He had been keeping a diary of everything that was going on and sent it into like this. It was like almost like a National Enquirer. Although I did like it, someone joked on Twitter and said that he sent it into like Alex Jones. I don't know why that just cracked me up. And so he sent in his book, and it's basically like that was kind of the end. Like, okay, there we go. It's like basically it's all going to come out. So people were mad that he did that, and I saw a couple comments were saying, well, he lost his life, so how can he be a hero? And I think people forget that heroes, one of the greatest sacrifices you can do for people that you care about is give your life. You know, give your life for someone trying to do the right thing, trying to help someone. So that's not a loss, even if you're unable to finish your task. I mean, there's so many people who try their hardest to save someone and then they both get lost. That doesn't mean that person's not a hero because they ended up not being able to achieve their, I don't want to say the task, but just because they weren't unable to save someone or help someone or do someone, it doesn't make it any less wonderful that they tried to do this. Um, thank you. Here you go. Heretic Prince. Rorschach has such a strong character that he was almost a force of nature. He would tell the truth because he must tell the truth. Exactly, Heretic Prince. And I think people really aligned with him because he held to it in this fallen world where even his mentor, I know that in Rorschach's eyes, he's like going, well, my mentor is like this thing, but he couldn't see his mentor was obviously not this great guy. But the one thing I did enjoy was that even as terrible as the comedian was at the end, when he found out about Ozymandias' plan, please again correct me if I'm saying that wrong. Even he started to feel like sick. So even for him, it was too much. Like it was like, okay, this is like it was beyond the pale of villainy. And I mean, let me tell you, the comedian did some horrible things. But I don't think Rorschach knew about them, and then later on a book comes out about it, but it's a book and he's like, okay, well, maybe these are allegations. So for him, he's like, and then again at the end it was like, I know that's like a big controversy, which I'm not really don't want to get into that, not because I don't think it's important to discuss. It's just because I'm trying to again fly under YouTube's radar for on certain words, not trying to say too many things at once. But that is the other thing that is kind of cool too, is that it is a book that does focus. Everyone has a flaw, regardless or not if Alan Moore meant for everybody to have a flaw. I mean, I'm pretty sure, and that I guess will be discussed more when we get back into the death of the author. Um, so anyway, so let me just backtrack a little bit here. So shoot, lost my train of thought. Anyways, so I mean, there was a couple scenes too that showed. I mean, I think someone else wrote a really great point that was like Rorschach knew it was it was an evil world, but he still cared about the people in the world. He still wanted to do what was right and to make things right, and to, he cared about the individuals. And obviously, if you were an individual that did bad, you were going to get either a beat down, or you're going to get off. But he still cared about like individuals. He wasn't willing to off millions of people. Millions. Let me just rephrase that. He wasn't willing to off millions of innocent people. And I think that's what people kind of miss is, yes, Rorschach does take the law into his own hands in that he like fully gives out justice when he's like, okay, I know you've done these evil things and now you're going to get it. But he doesn't sit there and wipe out innocent people. So that way it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to wipe out innocent people. I don't care if they've done anything or not, because I'm trying to do this and I'll put this in this greater good. But again, like I said, who gets to say that's the greater good? I don't know if all those millions of people who just lost their, I don't know, people who lost all their loved ones. I don't know, people who, lost their lives are going to sit there and go, yeah, that was the right choice, especially when they've never done anything. So Um, going back to Rorschach, there was a couple things that do show his humanity, and I think, not his humanity, but there was like a little bit more of just a soft side on two incidents, and it was one when he goes back to an older villain that he thinks that was the comedian's arch nemesis, and he finds out that guy hasn't done any crime or anything, and one of the one of the things that happens is he finds that the guy's dying of like cancer. It's like some I think it was like some 4-stage cancer or something. It was terminal. Oh no, it was terminal cancer. And he before he leaves and finds it out, he finds some pills, and they turn out to be like, kind of an illicit drug or something that they weren't supposed to have. And so he asks him, "What is this for?" And he says something, and he's like, "Oh, it's basically uh for cancer that's terminal." And so then instead of doing anything to him, because obviously he's doing an illegal thing, he was able to go, "Okay, you know what? You're dying." He could understand why someone who's dying would take that, and of course, then he said, "Okay, just give me the name of the drug company or whoever sent this to you because I'm gonna go give them the beat down." So that was another thing I really appreciated, is that not going after the little, petty individuals, but going after the actual ones who are causing harm to society. You don't go and I feel like that's what we do a lot lately, is we go after these little guys, but we never go after the big guy, the big people who, should be brought to justice, or who are causing strife with the little guys, I think. So, um, like I said, and I'm that one, I hope people kind of get what I'm trying to say here, because I would hate for someone to say, "Oh, okay, so you're okay with people getting away with no with legal stuff." No, I'm not. I'm just saying that he was able to see a little bit of a gray area there, um, or nuance. I'm not gonna say gray area. He was able to see some nuance. And there's another scene where he's getting into it with his landlady, and then he's calling her out for being, I think she was a prostitute or a lady of the night or something. I can't exactly remember. Um, but when she says something about her kids being there, and asks him not to say it in front or go on about the kids, then he sees he sees the kids there, and then he stops himself. Now, yes, I know I was talking about this with Jada, and Jada was saying, well, it's also because it happened in his past, but that also doesn't matter, because a lot of just because it happens in your past, we've seen before, people don't necessarily care. They'll still repeat the thing that has happened in their past to someone else because they don't care if they lived it, someone else can. So that was what I also admired, is that he did care enough about kids, that kids were something that he cared about. And yes, his experiences help shape him, but anybody's experience can shape them for good, or they can shape them for bad. In here, they shaped him for good and trying to do good. And again, I know he offered uh, someone who had harmed a child, in a pretty brutal way, but it was like, okay, you had to do certain brutal things to get very brutal reactions. Here we go. Sorry, not Rorschach. Rosella says these weren't these were meant to be classic heroes DC acquired, but DC wouldn't let him. Yeah, yeah, that was that's a good point, Rosella. They were meant to be. And then Heretic Prince says, I love that the story is challenging today's of you're not 100% good, then you're evil mentality. Yeah, yeah, exactly, and you bring up a great point, Heretic. I feel like maybe that's why we have I don't wanna keep harping on the Mary Sue thing, but I wonder if that's why we have so many, what do they call 'em, Mary Sues and Marty Stews a little bit. I don't think we have as many Marty Stews, but we definitely I'm sure there are a few out there, and I wonder if that's because they're afraid to show a hero with flaws, a hero overcoming flaws, and I would say Rorschach it fits in the definitely he's not someone who's overcoming flaws. He already has flaws, obviously, but yet what makes him wonderful is it's just someone who's like, all these characters are flawed. You're not sitting here going, okay, I wonder, but yet he's still, even in a flawed world, even with his own flaws, he's always trying to do the right thing. And I know when it was going to be punishable to superheroes, and so they all had to turn in something or register. They had to do something. I wish I could remember what it was, or there was something like that. And Rorschach ended up dropping off like uh, a body that had been a person who was a serial attacker and everything else, with the word no on it. No, I'm not going to stop doing what I'm doing. I am going to continue doing what is right. and trying to get rid of people that need to be brought to justice and that aren't being brought to justice. So I think that's also why a lot of people identify with him too. I know that for him, he has very, very outdated thinking. But one of the things is just because some of his thinking is outdated on some things, he never tries to take. It's like he doesn't try to take harm against people. So there's like one scene with uh, again, guys, please correct me if I'm saying Ozymandias wrong, but there's like a scene with Ozymandias where Rorschach is saying, okay, when he first goes to kind of confront him and thinks, oh, okay, maybe he's not doing anything. So in his diary, he's writing down, he's like, oh, okay, yeah, no, he's like, nah, basically, I can't really see anything yet, and it's something about him, like the only thing maybe being that he's gay, and so. I know that was a big thing that people will try to attack. I'm going, okay, but see, here's the thing. Even if it's something that Rorschach doesn't think is good, he didn't take it and think, oh, well, I have to off this person because of it. I have to harm this person because of it. It's like he kind of knew. He knew there was a line. He himself had a line where he knew, okay, just because something's unsavory to him doesn't mean it's an automatic um, beatdown sentence. Um, he wasn't going around like I wish I could remember. Like I said, I haven't read it in a while. It's been some time since I've seen it, but there've been like other little things that he's like a little prejudiced against, but yet he doesn't take that and use it as something that, okay, I need to go and harm this person because I don't like this type. It's like he acknowledges I don't like this type, but that doesn't mean it's worthy of anything that it needs justice. And that's what was also I liked about him because again, he knew limits. I mean, and I know that there was a great video by one of these. I think his name is Literature Devil. If you guys don't follow him, you guys should give him a follow because he's great in breaking down things. But he discussed like how a character who has a flaw, can still be a hero. It doesn't mean they're not a hero. It's just they have a flaw. And what makes them a hero is saving people despite that flaw. So either a character that doesn't we'll just go sexist. That's just easy. Let's say there's a sexist character. If a sexist character still goes out and tries to do his best to save, you know, either sex and doesn't give either sex like, oh, okay, you have permission to harm someone and you have permission to harm someone, in this like active situation. Oh, as long as like that person goes out and saves those people, it doesn't make their actions any less heroic. And I don't know if that's maybe something that we forgot in today's society. I think we forget a little bit that where it's like, okay, uh, sometimes people get kicked out of positions in anything because they'll have done or said something stupid. But yet, if they're running something correct and they're not harming those things, then to kick them out of their job just seems like, or to, it's like you can't just strip people of, I guess, like, well, I guess we'll just go back to what Heretic Prince says. um, if you're not 100% good, then you're evil. And I just don't think, well, that's just not true. But what we can do is we can always point out the flaws and we can look at the flaws and we can learn from them and acknowledge that those are bad flaws and that we shouldn't admire those qualities. You don't have to admire those qualities to and you can discuss those qualities and you should say, you know what, these are bad qualities to have. We should not have these qualities. We should not, hate people. We shouldn't um look down upon people even. We don't have to like what they're doing, but we shouldn't look down upon. I guess I'm trying to I know I'm all over the place here, guys. Hey MSK. But it's something that I think we've forgotten that and it really is like a weird mentality that we're at, and I think that's why. But again, I mean, they're sitting here going, okay, but you guys who are saying, oh, he's not Rorschach's not 100% good, but he's evil. Then how come Ozymandias, who has off millions, is good? I mean, that's like incredibly high. I mean, and let me see, just not just millions, but innocence. And I think it even shows some of the children getting wiped out. And it's like, okay, what is going on here? And I will say, going back to Rorschach, one of the things I did enjoy about his character too is that he called out everyone. I think there's like a scene with a therapist, and he's like they're doing the whole where they're showing him the ink blot test, so I guess the Rorschach test. And he sees like, scenes from his past, but he knows that's not what they want to hear. So I think he says like a butterfly or he says something like that. He doesn't tell them the truth. And then when the therapist tries to push or something like that, Rorschach ends up like giving him some insightful information about the therapist himself and what the therapist's motives are. And it makes the therapist have to stop and think, okay, wait a minute, what am I doing? And I really enjoyed that aspect of his character. I thought that was pretty unique. And I think some of the other funny things is that yeah, Rorschach is not known for hygiene. He's now a very hygienic character. And I think that was it like he's kind of dirty and smelly and he's obviously he has his own little mental um issues, with that kind of stuff. And yet, that was one of the weird arguments that were used to be like, oh, well, he's a bad guy because of this. So let me see if I can find some of the comments on here because um they were pretty funny. Let's see. Oh, and I think that was the other thing too, is I just want to kind of get back because I'm looking through here. Alan Moore does not like Rorschach. He wants people to view him as this evil character now and doesn't like fans. But then someone actually had brought out one of his older comics, so I guess which was a little bit. It was like less judgmental. So I don't know. I know that Alan Moore is kind of like nutty. So I don't know. Here we go. Let's open this one in a new tab because I'm pretty sure everybody else knows his other um quote. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and share screen real quick for you all. Let me say, he disagrees with the way some people live their lives, but understands they are within their rights to live that way. Thank you, Heretic Prince. Like you just summed that in perfectly. And Alan needs to shut up. Yes, he does. And I don't know if you've seen this Heretic Prince, but you might appreciate this quote from him. Okay, so here we go. And okay. So here we go. So panel one, it says, this is our first full view of Rorschach in fashioning this uncompromising avatar of judgment. Moore drew inspiration from two characters who would have been recognizable to comic fans. The Question and Mr. A, both created by Steve Ditko. Moore in his early proposal for the series when it was still going to feature the I hate pronouncing. You guys clip me out for mispronouncing things. I'm going to be very irritated. To feature the Carlton characters, wrote the following about Question. The Question is not in the slightest bit concerned with the law. He is concerned with truth and morality, and if that means breaking corrupt laws that only exist because of the actions of dissident pressure groups and minorities, then he will break them without thinking about it. The way I see the Question, he is such an extreme character that even hard-line right-wingers would feel nervous about his attitudes and actions. The thing is, in order to present the character fairly, I will have to make those views completely logical and heartfelt so as not to present him as a parody of right wing attitudes as seen by a left winger. I suppose what I want to do with the character is to keep him as true as possible to the quintessential Steve Ditko character and philosophy. Now, while I've always found Steve Ditko's expressed political opinions to be strange and possibly dangerous, I have a huge amount of admiration for anybody who is prepared to take an unpopular position simply because they happen to believe it's morally right. Morals today are at a premium, whether you happen to agree with them or not. On top of this, I have the greatest possible regard for Steve Ditko as an artist and creator and wouldn't want to portray his characters falsely or inaccurately. The black and white motif ties in with the character's very hard edged moral philosophy and is also used by the character himself as a metaphor for the ambiguity of life. The ambiguity of life. Each man must read his own fate into the pictures conjured by the neutral Rorschach blot and judge himself accordingly. And this is Absolute Watchmen minutes, looks like paragraphs 19 to 21. And then I'm gonna read. So that was like an older one. Now I'm gonna go ahead and read his Didco. Is it Didco? Okay, thank you. Um, I need to, I don't know, learn how to pronounce some of these people beforehand. So let me go back and I'm gonna go back into my bookmark. Oh, sorry, did you
Huh?
oh, you unmuted yourself. I didn't know if you wanted to say something.
No, yeah. I mean, I just wanted to comment on that small panel that you read. I think that that's actually a very good example of sort of what the prevailing um, sort of mindset was. I think in decades past when it came to exploring themes or even political themes or political positions that maybe a writer did not always agree with, was that there was still a deep respect there, which I think is why the character of Horshash, I think that's how you say it properly. I don't know. Like I said, I've never quite been interested in Watchmen, but you can see that even though Alan Moore, I'm thinking that's what that paragraph was principally about, didn't necessarily agree with Steve Ditko's real world political viewpoints, he still wanted to respect the characters that he was sort of making an affectionate parody of. Because I'm not too familiar with Mr. A, but I am familiar with the question, and at least in the versions of the question I'm familiar with, the question is viewed by the world or by those who don't know him sort of as a conspiracy theorist. But as the paragraph points out, what he's concerned about is the truth, right? And getting the truth out there. Is just that to the outside world, he looks absolutely crazy. And then of course the question himself, sort of wears this like faceless mask, right? So I
Mhm,
can certainly see where the inspiration is from, but I think that's where a lot of the I think that's what's missing. There is a lack of respect in with modern comic writers for the medium and even for those that they oppose or disagree with. Alan Moore clearly still saw value in the characters and what he believed that they represented, even if he didn't necessarily agree with what he deemed as right wing positions. Right? He
mhm.
even says in that, I don't want the characters to come across as sort of a lefty's parody of what a right winger is. He still wanted to be respectful and more like truthful to how Ditko imagined those particular characters. Honestly, I wish that we had that more of that today, both in the mainstream and in the indie space. If people, would show respect, I guess you could say, to their opponent or even their enemy instead of just, devolving into childish uh, parodies. But then again, we are dealing with creatives, and when it comes to Alan Moore, like a lot of folks who have been in the business for a long time, they eventually become very jaded. They eventually
Mm.
become very jaded and they end up hating the work that they became most famous for. So, personally, I wouldn't take too much of what modern day Alan Moore says all too seriously. He says things just to piss people off, just like a lot of folks do. It's like taking Jerry Conway, modern day Jerry Conway, seriously. It's like, please, just put the man on mute and just move on. One of the problems that we have is that we take the commentary of individuals, especially on Twitter, entirely too seriously. When most of the time it's trolling or it's a desperate attempt to get attention or to just rile folks up. Alan Moore didn't say those things about, oh, Rorschach is smelly and he's meant to represent the comic reader because he wanted to have some sort of discussion. He wanted to piss people off, probably because he's tired of being famous for this one thing. So
Yes, and I yeah.
don't take it so seriously.
Yes, I agree, and I think that yeah, because I think people try to make some spinoffs, or they did make some spinoffs with The Watchmen, and he was really not happy with, that, and I can't remember, I think he rejected the royalties on one of them too. He was so, um, mad that they would, because he wanted this to just be a one-off. Um, so, I mean, and I understand that, but, I mean, still though, I mean go start attacking. So here's the comment that I know people are. This is the one that people are more familiar with. I wanted to make Rorschach as like this is what Batman would be in the real world, but I have forgotten that actually to a lot of comic fans, smelling not having a girlfriend, these are actually kind of heroic. So Rorschach became the most popular character in Watchmen. I made him to be a bad example, but I have people come up to me in the street and saying, I am Rorschach, this is my story. And I'd be thinking, yeah, great. Could you just like keep away from me, never come anywhere near me again as long as I live? So that's his one that he has today. So I mean, like Gene said, you want to take this one with a grain of salt, and maybe the opinions kind of in the beginning are usually the ones that are more accurate to their feelings until like Gene said, they get sick of their own characters and fed up. So I think I actually pulled up another thing. Okay, so this is someone else's. I thought they had a great point. They said refusing to budge 1 inch on his principles, even in the face of certain death. Pretty heroic. And then you guys can read where here he is and talking to Dr. Manhattan, and he says, of course, uh, where is it? Of course, must. So this is when Dr. Manhattan's basically telling him, I can't let you leave and tell the world because um, if you do tell the world, then I'll everything's gonna bust out and break loose and all that. So then he said, of course, must protect. Oh God, I'm not gonna even pronounce that. So something's new utopia. One more body amongst foundations makes little difference. Well, what are you waiting for? Do it. And then Dr. Manhattan, you see him saying Rorschach, and he says, "Do it." And then that's the scene where Dr. Manhattan basically blows him up. And I think that is a really powerful scene. And I love that he takes his mask off because I think um, you don't find out halfway through the book what he looks like. It's not until I can't remember how they end up catching him, but basically he goes by and around during the day without his mask. And because he looks like okay, he can be anybody, and then at night you see him with the mask, but you yourself never get to see which character. Now I think he might be actually somewhere in the comic. Like I said, it's been a while, I think, but like you don't know it's him until you look back and go, oh, okay, that's where he is. So I think it was pretty powerful seeing they took his mask off to do that, to look him in the eye, to look, the person who's about ready to off him in the eye. So yeah, I think that's I do like and agree with that. So let me just go ahead and stop. Uh sorry, Rosales Allen later said Rorschach was, yeah, exactly. Even though, I mean, like, how can you're saying he's based off of these smelly comic book fans, but yet first he says Mr. A, or you have it written down where he said Mr. A and the question, and then later on you have it written down that he even said Batman. So, which I don't really see Batman influenced in Rorschach. So I don't know if anybody else sees that influence. I don't. I can't. I don't. I think just because you are vigilante, because Batman doesn't off people like that. I thought Batman was like trying to really hold to not having to end anyone because of what happened to his parents. So those of you who are more familiar with DC can correct me.
Well, well, that depends on sort of which version of Batman you're talking about. Because in the earliest comics, I think in the late '30s, he did kill people because
Oh,
he
gee.
was originally a pulp hero. And then, of course, when DC got their hands on the character and he became more popular, then there was this sort of ethical slash moral battle of should he kill, right? And the general consensus came to be that Bruce Wayne, Batman, right, does not kill
Mhm.
usually, right? You'll always have alternate stories of him killing, or there'll be these sort of situations depending on who's writing him and sort of what's popular at the time. Like there'll be times where like someone's hanging on the ledge, a villain's hanging on the ledge, right? And it's like Bruce didn't kill him, but he didn't help him either. So is he responsible for that person dying because he technically could have saved them, right? But the whole idea of
Right.
Batman is that at least in my opinion, is I believe he did heretic. I believe that he did in his earliest comics. He did carry a gun because again, he was more of a pulp hero. He was actually closer to, say, the Punisher back then than what came later on. We have to remember that we're talking about comic book characters that debuted in an entirely different time, an entirely different culture, and have been around for 80, little over 80 years now. I think a year or two ago Batman celebrated. It's like 80th anniversary. So we're talking about, a literal lifetime, right? So just like real world 80-year-olds have changed a lot over 8 decades, so are these characters that have, undergone changes due to social views, due to political things happening, due to various writers coming and going. So, yeah, I mean, what Batman was in like 1939 or 1940, whenever he debuted, and what he is now are completely different things. What he was in the 80s, and his comics got very dark in the 80s. You had A Death in the Family, you had Killing Joke, you had, what was it, Batman Year One, The Long Halloween, a lot of bunch of them. But in general, in the late 80s, there was this trend in the comic scene to sort of, try to take the comics in sort of a darker, grittier uh, place, because they were going for like realism.
Hmm. Hmm.
And after this kind of like, because like in the 60s, even Batman in the comics was sort of silly, goofy, because of the Batman TV show, right? And then 20 years on, it gets darker, it gets grittier, because at least they claim at the time they were trying to tell a more realistic or down to earth story, which I'm like, yeah. I don't know if it's entirely realistic. I think it was just cool at that time to be edgy and to push the boundaries. I mean, the Comics Code Authority was losing their power and authority by that point. So it's like, hey, let's push the envelope and see, how much we can get away with. So you get things like A Death in the Family, which was all about brutally murdering Jason Todd, because literally Jason was so unpopular. There was a literal poll back then to see like would the character die or not, and people called in, and it was by a small margin, but enough people disliked him to have him murdered. That's why that story happened. Either he was gonna live or he was gonna die, and it depend on how many people called in, and how many people wanted to see him live or go. And he was so unpopular for being the second Robin and replacing Dick Grayson that people wanted him dead. So that's why that happened. But as we see years later, what happened? DC still kept him around. They just resurrected him because death doesn't matter in comics, and they brought him back as the Red Hood, right? Which is
Hmm.
basically Bruce Wayne as a murderous vigilante, which is the Punisher, or closer to what he originally was in the first place. That's all.
I mean, that is incredible. I always think like I don't know if I could ever hate a character enough to want it off it, just because I'm always someone who sits there and goes, I want more though. I don't know, maybe I'm like one of those like those bad people. What do they call it? Like the bad consumers. 'Cause I'm always like, but I as much as I don't like them, but what is it gonna be like without them? Why don't we just keep them? So I guess like it, but again, I wouldn't go by me on things like that, because I would keep a character around just solely for the purpose of not wanting to lose that character. But yeah, that is really interesting, Gene, that people voted him off because he was that annoying to them. Um, so let me just get back to one of Heretic's thing. He said, "Could you imagine a comic today where the heroes don't all carry the writer's belief?" Well, here's another really great one. Oh, isn't Jason Todd popular now? If so, that is ironic. Is he popular as, what was it, the Red Hood, or is he popular as Jason Todd?
Well, Jason Todd and the Red Hood is sort of synonymous. I mean, I can't tell you how popular he is. I don't follow modern DC, but I do know that he's been popular enough for them to keep around and use off and on, I should say, since he was originally murdered in the 80s. I mean, if he's popular enough for the company to keep using even intermittently, there has to be some fan base there somewhere. It's more than what the original Captain Marvel got in Marvel. They usually only
Mhm.
bring him back either as some sort of clone or some other thing. They don't really use him. He's one of the few deaths in comics that has more or less stuck, and he died of cancer. An alien dying of cancer sounds like a crazy thing, but yeah, I mean, so I'm guessing he's at least somewhat popular now. I know he's featured in a lot of media. I know that there was this, what was it, Gotham Knights or whatever it was, where apparently he was a part of it, or they had this TV show where they had Dick Grayson. I think it was Titans, the live action Titans show, where Dick Grayson was the leader of the Titans, which is accurate more or less. But I remember reading comments and they were like, "Yeah, he calls himself Dick Grayson, but his personality is completely Jason Todd."
Um, yeah, hold on, let me see. Uh, from Cole, do you mean in terms of them dying in a universe or them not existing in any further comics? Um, Probably both, because I feel like it's really if you're gonna kill a character off, then you should kill a character off. I don't like it when you bring them back because that's just like them emotionally jerking with you. I don't like to be emotionally jerked around. But that's me personally. And I don't know. I think I would rather them be written off in a way that they can come back, not written off in a way where you off the character. I rather think, oh, okay, they went off on a happy new adventure. Kind of like when they used to say, oh, when your pet would die, instead of the parents telling them that, they'd be like, oh, they went to the happy farm, they went to so and so's farm, or your goldfish ran away to live on the with his family, or something weird like that. I'm more of like, just tell me something like that. Don't just off the character. Um, but again, that's me. And to be fair, I grew up on Archie comics, so I mean, really, there's nobody getting off in Archie comics except for uh the married. What was it? The Married Life, and that was like I can't remember. It's like kind of a spin-off thing, and that's a story for another day. I don't think any of you guys would be really interested in knowing all the Archie history. Um, let's see. Jason Todd at the time was treated like uh Jane. Can you pronounce that for me?
I can pronounce that. What Cole is saying is that Jason Todd at the time was treated like mocap in Mortal Kombat. So I can actually opine here. So mocap was this character that was added toward the end of the original run of Mortal Kombat games in what's known as the 3D era. So the last three games was like Deadly Alliance, Deception, Armageddon. I'm trying to remember if he was in. He might have been introduced in Deception. And I know certainly he was in Armageddon because Armageddon was just basically a souped up version of Mortal Kombat trilogy from like 10 years earlier. But anyway, mocap was sort of this like silly, at least in my opinion, kind of character because it stood for motion capture. He was literally a motion capture actor, and he was sort of, if I remember correctly, the whole thing was that he sort of did like the mocap for like Johnny Cage and like a few other characters. Yeah, but like mocap wasn't really popular. Although to Cole's point, I think a better character to use or to mention would have been Su Hao, because nobody likes Su Hao. Like even modern day NetherRealm Studios, formerly Midway Games, will not bring Su Hao back as a character. They literally rebooted the Mortal Kombat universe again in Mortal Kombat 1, and to my understanding, Su Hao still isn't there. Like nobody liked this character. They brought back Darius, they brought back Nitara, they brought back a few characters that were originally introduced in the last three Mortal Kombat games before they did Mortal Kombat 9, but they still won't bring back Su Hao. So I actually think Su Hao is a better example of what we're talking about than necessarily mocap, because they did bring back mocap, I think, in like Mortal Kombat 9 or something. But Su Hao, no one likes this guy.
And oh, from Heretic Prince, I love this. Uh, Jean knows her Mortal Kombat. Buckle up.
I played every title, every major title in the original run of games from 1992 to 2006. So long as we're talking about that, I can talk on it. 9 to 11. I mean, I know some of what happened, but you just can't escape it, especially Mortal Kombat 11. I hate that game. And then Mortal Kombat 1, Mortal Kombat 12, really. They basically just rebooted everything and they were like, well, let's try to do new stories. It's not really doing new stories. They're just putting characters in weird positions, like making Kuai Liang, who is typically Sub Zero, into Scorpion, because that's what fans wanted. I don't know of any fan who thought, yeah, that's cool.
um, from Savage Dribble. MK1 was only kind of a reboot. It's following the story from MK11. Wow. And then I think I skipped
11,
someone's comment. Oh, sorry. Timeline restarted
11.
twice.
Timeline restarted twice, and I'm thinking what he's saying is Suhao is
Okay.
still dead. Exactly. But that's the thing. I mean, like most of the characters weren't brought back. You can only put in so many characters in a franchise that has been around for over 30 years. And the thing is that,
Wow.
only so many characters really become popular. That's the case with any long running franchise. Like you start out hot and like you take like your first three entries, that's pretty much where your core cast is gonna come from. After that, you can try new characters. Some may become popular, most won't. And then the longer you go on, people just like, yeah, I'm not interested. Yeah, I don't care. I mean, like, what was it? They tried to do like a Street Fighter parody. They had this, what was his name, Cobra or something. He was basically meant to be Ken out of Street Fighter. I'm like, if I wanted to play Ken in Street Fighter, I play Street Fighter. I don't play Mortal Kombat to play as some knockoff of Ken. What are you doing?
Yeah. See, guys, aren't you guys excited Gene's here? Because I would have no idea what you guys were all talking about right now. So, I mean, yeah, totally hit her up for the more. um, let's, let's see. He was brought in at the end. In the end, joined the clan as a savage street kid. I might have missed something, guys. Did I miss something? Uh,
What?
I'm just like
Who's
saying,
joining
I think
what
I missed something.
clan? This is starting to
Sorry.
get weird.
Oh, sorry. Okay, they're sorry. Oh, excuse me, chat, for interrupting in your conversation. Um, so Gene, do you want to add or add anything else before I go back to, I think I missed someone's comment up here about something. Oh, it was about Jason Todd. Here we go. Yeah, how times changed. The customer loathing Jason Todd got his. Sorry, Gene, didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
that's the customer loathing for, yeah, but that's the thing. But ultimately, what happened, as anything else in comics, it was shocking for that time, but the character didn't stay dead. They just brought him back in a new form. I'm of the opinion that the best way I can compare it to is kind of like pro wrestling, right? A lot of pro wrestlers don't start out as the character they become famous as. They usually start out with several different characters that don't click, that don't work. They have to go through several character reinventions until they find the one that does that actually sticks. You can look at The Rock, John Cena, Cole Steve Austin, Kevin Nash, Razor Ramon, even more current stars like Roman Reigns or Cody Rhodes or others. They had to play multiple different characters until they found the one that actually resonated with fans. And I think it's similar in comic books. Okay, so Jason Todd doesn't appeal to fans as the second Robin, right? Especially back then, because
Mhm.
it's like, who are you to replace Dick Grayson, right? So people don't like him. Okay, people literally call in to have him killed. He dies this, absurdly grisly, violent death to give more pathos to Bruce Wayne, because that's what he needed. And what happens? They eventually bring him back in a more palpable form as a justifiably angry, vengeance driven vigilante. And then there's this core conflict between, you know, him and Bruce, right? The fact that in his mind, Bruce won't do what needs to be done and take out the Joker for a good, right?
Mhm.
In his mind, the moral, the moral good or the greater good would be to kill the Joker, right? Which makes sense when he literally died by the Joker's hands, right? And he believes
Right.
Bruce to be morally weak because he won't cross that line. Bruce's perspective on it, generally speaking, is that Jason is allowing his desire for vengeance cloud his judgment, right? And he's crossing a line that you can't come back from, right? Once you take somebody's life, you can't undo that, even if you feel that you are morally justified, right? And it becomes a question of,
Right.
okay, you kill the Joker, okay, you can sort of morally justify that, even though it's more to avenge your own murder than it is really to help others. But then, do you go kill Mr. Zaz? Do you go kill the Penguin? Right? Do you now hunt down every single criminal from the supervillain, to the bodyguard, right? So that's sort of like the moral conflict between the two, and that's what people get invested in. People get to live out their own little revenge fantasy of, if I was in Batman's position, I would have killed the Joker. Well, now you have that in Jason Todd.
Right. And then, like you said, then it becomes where's the line at that point? Once you've crossed it, are you going to cross it again? Um,
And how do you justify it each time that you cross it? How do you now say it again and again and again? He had it coming, like the musical Chicago, right? How many times can you justify killing someone, right? And is it really for the greater good, or is it for your own personal vengeance?
mhm. Yeah, exactly. And Savage Durrell, you bring up a really great point. Definitely, I think Batman is a study in merciful justice gone too far, and Rorschach is a study in the opposite. I agree. And you know what? That leads me to someone's tweet, which I thought was just like perfect for this conversation. So let me go ahead and present that too. See, guys, today, or I actually bookmarked a whole bunch of stuff for you guys today. Hopefully, I'm getting better at this. So here it is. Wrong one. There you go. I think Moore accidentally created a character that would stand the test of time. He went on. Oh, hold on. This wasn't it. Darn. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna search through it a little bit. Okay, this is what I get for having all my stuff up. My bad. Hold on a second, guys, while I find that in my bookmarks. Although I do agree with this person. Uh, he went on a record crapping on his character when really the safest inline with the character interpretation would be he's who you want him to be. Oh, here it is. It was this person's comment. See, this is why I just don't pay attention sometimes. Let me go ahead and share this screen. There we go. It's a little easier to just like, just do one click here. Okay, here we go. Character called Rorschach, you're only allowed to interpret him one way. Yeah, exactly. So I really like that that person's comment. I'm gonna keep clicking on that. Okay. Um, you know, where someone is totally free to look at it like Savage did. Okay, this is a character. This is the presentation of a character gone too far this way. This is a presentation of a character gone too far that way. And then there's other people who think, okay, we need characters like Rorschach, like who are more like hey, we need to see some serious justice. And then I mean, I do like that people can see him in different ways, but I think what started this whole breakdown was it wasn't just people saying that they viewed Rorschach as a villain, but they started to attack the people who liked Rorschach and viewed him as a hero, an anti-hero, which he actually does fit the anti-hero um thing more. So anyway, and again, one of the things that you do want to kind of always look at is look at the setting, the society. If you are going to be in a dystopian society, you're probably not going to have heroes. You're probably going to have anti-heroes. You're going to have people who will go to that extreme. So, but that doesn't make them not a hero in their own book, in their own universe. So I think that's something to look at. But I mean, people get interpretations of things all the time. Well, the problem is when you I don't know. I would guess start attacking people's character for liking a character or something. I think that's when it's like or telling them, oh well, you're just an immoral person. Like, geez, they just like the character. I don't know if that makes them like this terrible person. I mean, people like Disney villains. Um,
Yeah, I mean that that argument's always that poor argument, I should say, has always been around that if you like something that is problematic, right, or not necessarily wholesome, that it must mean that you actually, believe in or support this thing. It's like, no, right? People like to be entertained. You can find something perhaps admirable even in an evil person, right? You can find something disgusting even in a supposedly good person. But just because you enjoy something that you see in media doesn't necessarily mean that you are a fan of that thing in real life. Like, example, a lot of the stuff that I tend to be drawn to when it comes to media is typically dark, typically has a fair amount of violence, right, or crime. But just because I like playing games like, say, Mafia or GTA Vice City, does not mean that I am a fan of the mob in real life. I don't like the mob in real life. I don't like, senseless murder and death and destruction in real life. In these type of games, there's a story, there is a framework that makes what they do a bit more palpable. Like, to your point about, Watchmen, right? No one's necessarily the idyllic, Superman esque hero. They're not even Batman, right?
Yes.
Who has a darkness but still has strong morals. These are individuals that are deeply flawed and may not even necessarily be what we would call in the modern day a good person, but they still have some sort of ideal that they are trying to defend or protect or believe in. After all, it takes an immense amount of courage to die for something you believe in. You don't necessarily have to be, uh, a saint to die for something that you believe in. That can still be admirable, even if the person themselves overall, you know, is not exactly the type of person you would want to interact with in real life, right? So I've always found that
Mhm.
argument just very weak. It's like, no, most people are sane enough to understand that there's a difference between, fantasy and reality, right? And it's like, yeah, that scene in Scarface where, it's like, I'm Tony Montana. Yeah, that's fun to watch. It's not actually fun to experience. I have no desire to, uh, build an empire by illicit means, become high on my own supply, and then die in a hail of bullets. That sounds like a big waste of time and very painful. No thanks.
Yeah, and let me just get to this real quick. Is trying to use a PC properly is the best part of each stream. Um, uh, Savage Alan Moore will always be inseparable. It's the cornerstone of this personality. Yes, and you know, back to the death of the author, someone else brought up a great point. I think I'll just probably paraphrase it since I can't. I keep having issues trying to find the things I say. Okay, here it goes. It comes down to a math question for me. It's letting this person live will result in the loss of one or more innocents. Then it's the immoral choice to let him go. Um, Real quick from Cole. I know I love the most gory stuff out there, and I turned out well. Agreed, Gene. And like I was saying, people today are so quick to find others evil, even for something this trivial. Yeah, and um, I know one of the things of what does he say? Remember when JJ was willing to die to protect Peter Parker from the Green Goblin? Yes, you brought up a great one. Yeah, that and I know this was in the movie. I'm pretty sure it's probably in the comics as well. But when um the scene where the Green Goblin asked who was taking the pictures of Spider-Man, and he said that he didn't know they came in anonymously in the mail, knowing that yeah, he's putting his life. So we always know JJ is kind of being um he kind of always screws Peter Parker over, you know, but yet when it came down to something with safety, he did the right thing. So, I mean, that is a good moral character. And I think, I would like to see people go back and realize that even flawed characters can be moral and do the right thing. And it doesn't make them these evil. They're, how do I explain this? I think sometimes, I don't know, I don't even know how to go. I'll just go back to the death of the author. Um, so one of the things that someone had pointed out was that because Alan Moore had based Rorschach off of the question and the A, that even if he was trying to make Rorschach the villain, it didn't come off that way because of the character. Like, you're trying, like they were saying, like, you're trying to make it seem like he was this bad person. But yeah, it's hard because we saw his original quote compared to his quote now, and it's one of those things that now he's trying to say, well, you guys aren't supposed to like him because he was the bad guy. Well, I mean, there is something like with authors, like if you write a story and you don't stack it up the way that you want it to come off as, it's not the people's fault when they read it for reading and seeing something else. I mean, that's really on you as the author to make sure that you made something kind of more clear on certain things. Like, I'm not talking about having to beat someone over the head with something or be like just completely obvious, but if you're, you he didn't do a good enough job making Rorschach a villain. I would say he didn't. If that was what his goal was, then he didn't do that great of a job. The problem is, and he based him off of two very great heroes, and I don't know if it's just because he didn't um understand. And someone else had pointed out that maybe he didn't understand the comic book things, like when it comes to superheroes, and maybe that's why it was written like that. But sorry, Gene, you want to say something?
No, I mean, to Alan Moore's quote, don't let your character turn to a Freddy Krueger style diddler into finger paint. But I mean, I wouldn't take anything Alan Moore currently says about the character seriously. I think it's fair to say he's an embittered older man now, and he will say things just to piss people off. Right now, again,
Hmm.
I'm not familiar enough with Watchmen or the history of it or the behind the scenes to know whether or not he really intended for the character to be a villain. I mean, it sounds like everybody else is sort of, a dirtbag in this series. So it's like, is there anybody really who is a hero? But but when it comes to I'm not necessarily sure if I would call it death of the author, but the thing is that, in my opinion, when you are a creator, whether you're making a movie, you're writing a book, you're writing a song, whatever it is, right? You can try to be as clear as you like about um, what the topic is or the sort of theme or idea that you want the reader or the listener or whatever to come away with, right? But in the end, once you release that work, right, once it's in the greater atmosphere of mass media and mass, people buying it, listening to it, whatever it is, you don't have any say anymore over how others interpret it, how they understand it. I know that a musical example would actually be the song, at least in my knowledge, there's a lot of songs that fall into this, but would be the song, I think it's Sex Type Thing by the Stone Temple Pilots. That's basically a villain song. It's actually a song about a uh, sexual assaulter's mindset, right? And a lot of people took that song to mean that the singer, Scott Weiland, was pro sexual assault. He wasn't. He was saying that he wrote this song from the perspective because a girlfriend of his had sadly been through that, and this was sort of his way of just try to understand that type of disgusting villainous mindset. But because it's put to hard rock guitar chords, everybody thinks that it's this sort of pro you know attack the woman because she's wearing a short skirt song. It's like, it's not. He's not saying that what's on this man's mind is a good thing, but that's how a lot of people interpreted it, and that's certainly the how the media ran with it. Same thing the media did with songs like Cop Killer, which was not about murdering all police. It was actually about basically killing corrupt cops. But because it was the early 90s and because of gangster rap and all this other stuff, the media ran with this, oh, it's anti-cop, it's a screed against all police, which it wasn't. I'm not saying you have to like the song. I'm not the biggest fan of that song either. But it wasn't what people said it was. And you can go with plenty of songs with that. I've heard a lot of people say that the song "Closer" by Nine Inch Nails is like a really groovy sex song. I'm like, have you listened to the lyrics? It's the most depressing thing I've heard yet. There's nothing sexy about it. Just because somebody drops an F bomb in the middle of a song does not mean sex jam. It means it's terribly depressing. But again, people don't always listen to the lyrics. People go by what the media says. And and again, sometimes you can listen to something and not pick up, like, think about it. How many people honestly know that the song "Every Breath You Take" is not a wedding song, or that "White Wedding" is not a wedding song? Those are not pro happy marriage songs. One is about basically stalking your ex because Sting was going through a divorce, and that was his way of dealing with it. Putting his darker feelings into song. And the other one is basically about how at least the story goes, is that Billy Idol's sister was getting married around that time, and he wasn't a fan of it. He didn't think it was a good idea. So as the story goes, he wrote that song, which is a scathing condemnation of getting married. But again, does anybody actually listen to the lyrics? No. Hello? Eh? Oh Lord, why am I alone? I don't want to be alone. What happened? Why am I alone here? Help! Come back. Put this on mute till she comes back.
Sorry about that, guys. I got kicked. Bad internet. Um, yes, Heritage French, we're still here. Sorry, I got kicked from the internet. So, and sorry, guys. Remember when Garth was alone in Wayne's World? Um, gosh, sorry about that, Gene. So is there anything else you wanted to add? I know I cut out. I don't know if I cut out before you finished your thought or.
No. I was just ranting about how nobody listens to the actual lyrics of songs. That's about it.
Yeah, I mean, Gene, you're right. There's a country song, and I can't remember what it was, which song it is. But there's a country song. It's actually about uh like someone else getting married to the person that you love, but because they like the ballad so much, it ended up being like in the country western world, it ended up being like the number one what first dance wedding song. It's like you picked like the weirdest song because the song is about the couple not getting married, that he didn't that he made the mistake of not picking her, and now he's lost her. So you're right, you got to listen to the lyrics, guys, especially for important things like that. um so I think we discussed Alan Moore thinking all chaotic. Um, and let's see, we discussed moral ethics. I can't remember if there's anything else besides that. I think we kind of covered it all. Um, do you have anything else you'd like to add, Jean?
Uh, I can't think of anything other than that apparently Twitter thinks pictures of my cat is apparently sensitive content. So
Oh my
literally
god.
the white furball is too hot for Twitter to handle. I just find it funny because the two that I posted aren't showing anything. It's like I posted pictures of him lying on his back with everything exposed all summer, nothing. I put a poster of him, a picture of him, kind of like lying on his side or lying on bed, and suddenly it's sensitive content, sensitive content. I'm like, it's tasteful nudity. I can't help the fact that the cat is naked. I showed nothing. This is an outrage, Twitter.
I know. What is it? Being a bunch of Puritans at Twitter right now. I never mind that you get spam the heck with certain bots. Like those bots should be considered the sensitive,
Yeah, that should be the sensitive content. That should be the sensitive content. All of these silly bots and whatnot. It's like straight up X-rated material at times, and it's like, but the picture of the cat is somehow
Heaven forbid.
sensitive.
Or like those comment sections where it's like people posting little gifs or videos or something like innocent and wholesome, and you scroll and there's those bots posting their pictures. Those aren't apparently flagged as sensitive content though.
Yeah, I know, it's weird. It's weird.
And then Cole says, I think half of my followers are bots. Thank you, Elon. I'm not so sure you're not a bot, Cole. But yeah, shoot. I thought there was one other point I wanted to add, and now I've lost my point. It was something. Shoot. Yeah, I know. I know that like Jim was saying, it doesn't really sound like any of the characters are really heroes in Watchmen, but I think that now Alan Moore is trying to say that the guy that most people see as the villain, Ozymandias, is the hero because he offed millions of innocent people to save billions. And here's the thing, like obviously I think most of us with the rational brain would think no, because those are innocent people. You're not even taking out like the violent people, you're just taking out the innocent ones who've done nothing. But one of the things that I don't think people realize is that Alan Moore is kind of a, let's say this, a very odd, weird religion. There's some religions out there that think that the population needs to be under a certain number. And they're not the decent religions, I'll put it that way. They're kind of the ones that I would be concerned hanging out with someone who would view it's okay to take innocent lives for the greater good because you want to shrink the population. Because again, my thing is, I view all souls as being important to God and having value still. And to take a life and to take innocent lives is kind of one of those things that you sit here and going, well, that's like pretty extreme, guys. That's, who are you saving by doing that? So I do think that plays into a lot of why people, because Alan Moore is of that, I think that's why in his mind we should be identifying with the crazy character, even though it's like, but most of us are like, no. Yeah, exactly. Savage Rebel, I never think to include Ozymandias in my Batman Rorschach comparison. Ozzy is my morality math question taken to the world shattering extreme. And then call Mr. Elon
Well, yeah,
Musk.
I mean, I agree with Savage there, but actually, I don't think it's necessarily taken to the extreme because we've seen issues like that in real life, in particular with war. You can always look back, to the U.S. dropping 2 atomic bombs on Japan during World War II. A lot of people justify that. A lot of people try to morally justify that by arguing, well, if the US invades Japan, then even more Japanese and Americans get killed. Whereas if you just bomb 2 cities, and I mean 2 entire cities, not just like military installations in a city, the whole damn city, right? You know, do you have you done the right thing? Have you saved more lives? Have you saved billions by killing millions? Right? Have you saved the whole country and several of your own countrymen by destroying 2 cities as opposed to nuking the entire island? So to me, I look at that as there's no moral justification for that, in my personal opinion. It will always be a moral stain on American history, as sadly many things are. But if you look at it in practical terms, like Savage was talking about, was it the right call? Well, many would argue yes, given that how history played out. Japan eventually rebuilt. MacArthur was there for about 6 years, sort of guiding things for American interests. And now the country is still around. Those cities were rebuilt, and they are, very staunch American allies. So some may argue that yeah, ultimately it was the right choice or the best choice that you can make in a terrible situation. But for me personally, morally, that can't be justified. You can justify it from a practical perspective, and with the benefit of looking back on it decades later, when you all know when you know how it turns out. But you know, at the time, who knew what was going to happen? But that's the thing, right? That's the beauty of hindsight. You don't have to deal with the moral implications. You can just look at it as a what if question, right? Or just puzzle on it because now everything turned out well in the end. Try making that call as the president had to at that time. Not so easy. And we should count ourselves very lucky that we're not the ones having to effectively damn millions to save billions and try to justify it years later.
And yeah, Cole,
Sorry
yeah, Cole,
for getting more.
no worries, no worries. I mean, yeah. So, no, no worries. Like I said, come on here. People are allowed to have, um, are allowed to speak their views, and I think that, and this was just on a different thing that I saw on Twitter, but someone had posted like, you do not stand for free speech if you cannot stand for like all speech. All speech should be allowed. And one of the things is we should be able to discuss these things and have these conversations. They're important and to get other perspectives even. In some cases we need to see, well, maybe we don't even agree at the end, but we at least have a different appreciation for why someone thinks a certain way. I think more damage happens when we don't discuss these things. The morality of leadership at the time, there was no question. Vaporized the city when the fight. And then I would how did I say this? Going back onto Alan Moore's thing. So anyways, back onto the thing. Yeah, so it is I'm like, oh God, I've lost my train of thought now. So let me see, is someone here we go. If someone can't express ugly ideas don't get explored, and as a result, they don't change. Silencing is how you protect your problems. If someone can't ugly ideas don't get explored. Yeah. So exactly. Ugly ideas that they don't get changed. They fester, I think, and then sometimes they go underground, which is the most terrifying thing. And I think there's a Twilight episode that discusses this because one of the things that Rod Serling has a huge element is he has a lot of World War II elements in his Twilight Zone episodes, and plenty of them. And one of them had to do with there was we'll call him brown shirt. It was a brown shirt kid, and I believe there was a Jewish man who had taken him in and taken care of him, and so it was obviously two obviously very conflicting thing. And so at first, when the kid going off, and this is after World War II, and the kid is spouting off his stupidity, and so the people, I think they beat him up and they try to silence him. Whereas his Jewish mentor keeps trying to talk to him, going, "Okay, hey, I've raised you, I've helped you, and yet nothing. Like, what's going on with you?" And then there's a scene where, and basically, the brown shirt guy ends up meeting, I don't even know what you can say anymore, a dictator. We all know it's dictator, and he basically, tells him, "Oh, well, basically off the Jewish guy." And the Jewish guy, before he gets shot, he goes, "Okay, I'm going to leave you with these last words. And it's, you can never kill an idea, Peter." I think his name was Peter. "You can never kill an idea, Peter. Never. And that's like a line of relationships. You cannot kill ideas. They'll always be there. That's why you have to talk about them. You have to get them out, and you have to be able to help, get people to see, hey, you know what? You have to be able to argue logically, and get them to see some empathy in some cases, uh, to help change views. We can change views, but we can't change them by telling people not to talk. And I will say this, though, with the caveat of it being like, no, adults talk about adult things and should have adult discussions. That doesn't mean people go up to kids and try to tell kids adult things. You shouldn't be teaching children adult things. That is a line that gets crossed. That's indoctrination. No, they have parents. The parents are supposed to teach them. And you know what? When those kids reach adulthood, then you guys can discuss those things. I just thought it was weird, in some of these cases, and that is actually, I'm not going to get too onto it, but one of the things that really bothered me, thankfully, I was kind of towards, I was right before things got really out there, and at least the California colleges, where you couldn't say anything. There were plenty of times where I had some death stares from like the professors for saying something, and it's like, well, how do you know that you guys can't convince me if you guys just let us have a conversation and talk this out? And that's the one thing. It's like, okay, we're all adults in college. We should all be able to discuss things, but if you're shutting down all um, conversations, not allowing people to debate and have discussions, then, what's the good of college? College is supposed to be for exploration of ideas. Anyways, let me go back to Cole's. That stuff brings me back to the Disney remakes, where they try to erase problematic stuff from the originals in their eyes from history instead of addressing the issues, which makes it worse. Yeah, exactly. Or some of the things aren't even problematic. Like, there's some things in there that it's like, I can't remember. I know that there's a couple things that they've done some things to. I'm like, okay, you guys are reading this into it, but this thing was never into that. So that's for you. So there's some weird.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think I've expressed my opinions before about Disney's numerous remakes of their 90s stuff, and it's like, don't get me started. I remember seeing Beauty and the Beast in the theater in like 2017. I still want my money back. But the problem with media, I think, in general, especially if we're talking about Disney, is that they took things that were not problematic and made them problematic. And then sincerely problematic things, they now try to pass off as acceptable or as moral. And that's the big part. It's like, oh, well, there was Stockholm syndrome in the original film. It's like, where was it? Like, that was the problem. In the beginning, they were responding and trying to basically overcorrect for these bad faith arguments made by people like Lindsay Ellis. Hell, even Lindsay Ellis, before she I think shut down her channel, admitted that even she eventually realized that Disney was overcompensating because of commentary by individuals like her. And I actually think that for some of her Disney stuff, she had some very interesting observations. But this whole thing, oh well, she had Stockholm syndrome. I'm like, no. The whole point of Beauty and the Beast is that in many ways it's a depiction of a marriage, right? The marriage starts out bad, they don't get along, Belle doesn't tolerate the beast behavior, and then as he changes, right, he becomes better, then she begins warming up to him. It's a
Mm-hmm.
relationship that is fractured in the beginning because it doesn't have the best origins, and then over time they actually learn, to live with each other and meet in the middle. If you don't believe me, watch the Something There musical number. That's what the whole scene is about. And then
Exactly.
actually falls in love with him while Gaston doesn't improve. Right, the Beast starts out as a jerk, improves to become an honest, a nice person by the end of the film. Gaston goes from a jerk you can kind of laugh at to a psychopath, all because he can't have a girl who doesn't want him anyway. Because he literally views her as a prize to be won.
Mm-hmm.
He has this hunter mindset. He's like, oh, you're not gonna take my prized possession from me. Completely, overlooking the fact that she was never interested in him, but he doesn't care. So right, so when he tries to manipulate the situation by using her father, and she thoroughly rejects him. It's like, oh well, she did it because she's. I'm like, no, it's not Stockholm syndrome. She fell in love. Unless you are
Hmm.
saying falling in love itself is Stockholm syndrome, well then that's a different argument. But that's the
And you know,
thing.
oh, go ahead.
No, no, but that's the thing. They took so many elements that now look, could you have used the live action film to maybe explain the situation better? Sure, I can understand that. But they didn't. Literally, when they have the big dance, and then when they go out to the balcony to talk, and the beast is like, "Are you happy here with me?" And, what's her real name? The chick who
Oh,
played Ellen in the film. I forget her real name at the moment. She played
Emma,
Hermione in Harry Potter. I forget her real name at the moment, but her, because I refuse to call her Belle. She was not Belle, but
no,
she's like,
was it Emma
well, don't
something?
you? Yeah, something to that effect. She's like,
Watson.
wait,
Sorry.
can you truly be happy if you aren't free? And I'm just like, no, 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 no. This is not how you address the supposed problem that was not there in the first place. And then when they did the whole thing about how he realizes he's in love with her when he realizes that he has to let her go, even though he doesn't want to, because her father might die if he doesn't. I'm like, you don't have the other character state that he's realized this. He's the one who has to realize it. That's why it was so powerful in the original when he explains, I'm letting her go because I love her. You don't have the damn talking candle suddenly come to that realization for him. No. I hate that movie.
I don't blame you. The thing is, I knew I was not gonna like that movie. So I was like, no, I'm not even gonna go and let you taint it and make me upset at like this. So I didn't get to see it. And thank you for letting me know that I made the right decision not watching it. Um, but yeah, no, I think one of the things that they miss, and I love this. I watched the commentary on the original Beauty and the Beast, the cartoon in the 1991, I believe. Um, they talked about how they had the characters like physically change, and one of the things I thought was cool is that they had the beast go from walking on all fours, very animalistic, to suddenly being on 2 feet and walking and having more like he found his humanity throughout the movie. You see him going and just slowly changing, and if you go back and watch the movie, you can actually see like the steps of him changing with his as he's growing as a person. He actually starts to become more human, more in his mannerisms. And with Gaston, they showed the opposite, where they had him becoming more animalistic and like just like a raving, chaotic, because he became more of a beast. So I always thought that was kind of an interesting choice that they made in the animation. Um, but yeah, so go ahead, Gene.
No, yeah, I mean, I remember hearing the same commentary, and as I got older, watching the film, you get older, you start to notice these type of things. That was a very, that was a great creative choice, because that was very subtle but important visual storytelling. The beast is becoming a man, and the man is becoming a beast, all because of their reaction to one woman. The beast improved himself because he fell in love with Belle, and then he saw, wait a minute, I'm nice, I'm kind. She's beginning to like me. I'm going to keep with this. And then Gaston, unable to accept rejection, right? He, like you mentioned, becomes more crazed and animalistic, because he doesn't view her as a person. He doesn't even view her as a person that he's desperately in love with. Nothing in the film ever specifically states that he's in love with Belle. He just wants her because he believes that he's entitled to have her. Even in the very in the intro song where he's introduced, he wants her because he's like, well, I'm the most handsome man in town. She's the most beautiful woman in town. Perfect match. It's got nothing to do with love. I mean, you can even see when he proposes marriage without telling her, by the way. Right? He describes what he thinks is wedded bliss, right? They're gonna
Right.
have kids and live in a cottage and have all these dogs, and nothing wrong with that, but that's his idea of wedded bliss. What does the beast do to impress her? He actually gives her something that she takes value in, the library.
Mhm.
And I'm jealous to this day. Damn it, it should have been me.
Yeah, I know. I wonder if they ever, and then, I don't know if you've ever, at Disneyland, they actually had like a recreation of the library, which was really cool. And then I guess they're recently taking it out. So that's just kind of a bummer I wanted to toss out there. I don't know why they're getting rid of it because it was really popular at the end. I don't know if they're going to stick anything in there. Then Justice for Gaston. I don't know why so many guys like Gaston. I've noticed there's a lot of guys who really like Gaston. And I'm really curious about that. Like, why you guys prefer him over like the Beast so much? I don't know if anybody wants to give me some insight on that. Um, but yeah, so I think we had a good discussion today. Would you like to add any closing arguments or points or anything we should touch upon before we go?
Nothing that I can think of, but there's always Twitter, and we'll see what else they determine is saucy. Apparently, pictures of a cat are now too risque.
So everybody go follow Jean because she's gonna have some interesting story going on now with the I don't know what we should call it. We should call it like, what do they call it? Something gate, cat gate, something. Someone think of something creative, a creative name for that. Um, so I hope everybody has like a good weekend. I hope everybody, take some time, go explore some new stories. I don't know, go do something, guys, today. And I think next week we're going to be talking about mentors. I'm going to go back a little bit. I don't think we'll go back. I'm going to leave the mentor one open a little bit. I think on some of these we will discuss characters, and it won't always just be female characters. Since there are some themes I want to explore that I think it works better when we explore both sexes versus just the one sex. I think we did a really great job of covering most female archetypes. So I think we're going to go over mentors and passing the torch. I'm glad you had fun, Heretic. And we will see you not this Sunday, but the Sunday after. So I don't know what Sunday that is. So everybody take care. Have a good weekend. And thank you, Jean, for being here. And thanks, Cole. Everybody take care. Bye.
Take care, everybody, and thank you.